here we go. This is the new motherboard. I already made the first one. First one had RGB problems. So reset the BIOS on that first one. All of a sudden the computer didn't want to boot after that. They sent me this one. They said they fully tested it with the the 2400G, which is in here. You can see that very well. But yeah, I bought this out of the combo from Newegg. I was like, I need something from, something new for my wife instead of my old hand-me-downs. I'd get her something halfway decent. So it was a combo deal, this motherboard and CPU. I already had the RAM. As you'll see, obviously reseating it. So it is 2400. It was running on the motherboard perfectly fine until I decided to try to hook one of their coolers on it that has RGB on it. To start it out, I'm gonna just stick this cooler on here real fast. It's an older AMD CPU cooler, it does a trick. I'm not gonna put any thermal paste quite yet. I'm just gonna show you hooking it up. Just hooking this up or it doesn't really move around with that fan motion once the fan kicks in. 4-pin, 24-pin. Okay. 8-pin for the CPU. Okay. Grab this thing up here. Old switch, I pulled off a old case. I usually use this for turning the computer on, honestly. This one, power switch. This one here. Right into the power switch. Okay, nothing's hooked in besides the monitor. Turn it off. Turn it back on. See, the monitor somewhat works. Okay. So here is DVI. This goes to DVI. The board has DVI hookup. Here's the keyboard, I think. Maybe the mouse. Yeah, this is the mouse. The power supply still doesn't have power running to it. Keyboard. So far the basics. The best I got during like a couple hours testing was I did get the board to boot up, went into the BIOS, but the time I could even go in the BIOS, I'm like, I already did a CMOS reset, but I was like, maybe I just tell the BIOS to go back to default. The time I did that, it shut off. It stayed on for a decent amount of time. After that, swapping the RAMs to different slots, you see the BIOS sometimes kick in and then back off. The board would just shut off. Repeatedly. I thought, some AMD boards, they shut off, turn on. They do that a couple times. Yeah, this just repeatedly does it. So here's the power thing for the power supply. Power supply is off. Plug it in. Okay, everything should be good to go as it sits right now. No hard drive, so I still should get in the BIOS. Powering it on. Hit the power switch. Fans come on. Nothing. So Look on my hook. No. See, look. There. Just shut off. Turn it back on. Yeah, there's not thermal paste on it, but it's not going to be hot enough to fucking just not even get in a BIOS and just turn off. So I hit the switch, turn it off. One thing I didn't do was put this battery in. Speaker up. So you try this again. Power's on. Power button turns on. Nothing. Nothing, right? So you just let this run for a second or two. Now I stepped in, pulled my RAM from my main computer so I know it runs. This is 2666. I also did pull this RAM out and put it in my main computer, It worked. So as you see, it just keeps looping. Okay. Turn it off. Power button. You see no beep, nothing. Just turn this around. It shouldn't make a difference, but okay. Take this RAM out. Amazingly, you think, oh, just doing one RAM at a time will get it to boot. I could never get it to boot with just one stick in it. So, let's pull both of these out. Go to the method of putting in each slot. Turn it on. Now I expect it to turn off now, just because I did put another stick of RAM in it. You seen it, right? It went to BIOS for a second and turned back off. That's the first time I actually got it to do with one stick. So it goes into the BIOS and then turns back off. Okay. But obviously you see it's not doing it now. There you go. Back in the BIOS and then turns back off. Okay. Take this stick of RAM out. Stick another one in there. Power supply back on. Computer back on. Okay. Came on for even a second. I just barely seen it. Okay. Now mention I did check this RAM in my other computer and it had no problems running with this RAM in there. Both sticks showed up. But I'm gonna try one of mine. Okay. Power switch on. So maybe when they tested the board, they got what I did, where the board come on for a second and then they just turned it off. Like, oh, it's good, you know. I suppose, I think they said they were running 3200 RAM. But I didn't have a problem with any of this RAM. So, four stick of RAM in it. All known working RAM. And every single one of them gives a different result. Well, same result. Some of them give different results. Okay, power it on again. See, nothing. Now that's kind of normal. They shut off, turn off once you add a new RAM sometime. See, the monitor is detecting it. You can see all that. See if it goes through now. No? No? What? Nothing? Okay. Just turn it off. Just even... Maybe magically it will work now with just this one in this slot here. Turn back on. Power on. Oh, you notice something different? The fan's not acting all weird now. Because these are the slots right here that they recommended to here. A2 and B2 just shut off. Obviously you can see that those turning back on. Still no image. Still nothing. Still nothing. So, nothing whatsoever. Okay, turn it off, and I hit the power button, make sure it's good. So it's a no power, good power supply, no good RAM. Monitor's good, cable's good. Okay, pull this, unhook this. Okay. Oh, maybe I need to, pull the CPU out. Just check it out. Everything looks good in there. See, everything looks good in here. Blow it out a little bit, just in case. Maybe there's some dust in there. Drop the CPU back in. The CPU's not even warm. It's like cool to the touch. I do have the original cooler for the CPU. It just, you gotta bolt these ones on, so I didn't want to have it just sitting on there being able to turn with the torque of the motor. At least this, helps it down. So, hook the fan back in. Okay. Take this RAM back out. Put the stick back in. Turn it on. Turn it on again. See, that's what's weird. If you put it in this first slot, fan acts weird. Throttles up and down, up and down. Put in this slot, fan's fine. but it still does not turn on. Nothing. Typical, like I said before, normal, for it to shut off, sometimes it turn back on because of, you know, a hardware change. Nothing. Just kill this. Get this off here. Let's stick the other RAM back in. And they did say they updated it. Obviously, the BIOS recognizes the chip because it wasn't turned on, right? So, the problem I had with the first motherboard, like I was saying, I hooked to RGB header to get the fans to work. To get the fan hooking, I obviously don't have it now. The cooler, you know, with that had RGB on it. I hooked that in. It was working at first. I was tweaking in the BIOS to change the colors. Like, oh man, let's check this out. And then all of a sudden, the red stuck on, super bright. Where when you felt the fan, the shroud was hot, so it was sending way too much volts to the LEDs. So only thing else I can think is something happened on the motherboard. Maybe it fried my CPU. And so I called them. I was talking to him on the phone. I said, hey, you know, your other motherboard that I bought from you, 5 months. I had this thing 5 months. It's been 20 days in this RMA process. If that old motherboard fried my CPU, what are you guys gonna do about it? Nothing. That's on you. What? Seriously. You know, you see my channel, I'm not big, you know, but I do a lot of repairs. I build a lot of computers. I do it as a hobby. And these guys are like, dude, we can't help you. Okay. I had an Acer, not Acer, a Zeus or whatever, motherboard. Might have been a gigabyte. Had it for about a month. Everything perfectly fine. Did the video I never posted, obviously. That motherboard went bad. Fried the CPU. Called them, did an RMA. I said, I don't have another CPU. Can I just send my CPU to? Just in case. I doubt it's CPU. They traced it down. The board killed the CPU, like I said. They sent me a new motherboard and a new CPU. They replaced my CPU because, you know, good customer service. Yeah, it cost them money, but they're going to make more money back. The first board I had from ASRock, I started an RMA on it, and I was like, heck with this, not worth sending back. I paid $150 for it. I'm not going to deal with this. RMA process went good kind of then. I go in the BIOS, and it would freeze. I went through different CPUs, different RAM, and it just go in the BIOS, and it would freeze after a while. So you couldn't even, like, if you're wanting to overclock it, you couldn't because the BIOS would just freeze. It said BIOS freeze something. No, like the BIOS wouldn't lock up. Yeah, the BIOS would just completely, you know, lock up on me. So I was like, I ain't even worth it. And then, which I should have, after the year, the BIOS, about a month after the warranty, because I only had like a 1-year warranty for some reason, the BIOS completely went out in it. So I ended up having to order a new BIOS for it. Paid out of pocket. I should have just RMA'd it. But that's terrible. 2 boards. The 2 boards I have had from them, I had problems with it. And now this is actually technically the 3rd board I have had and had problems. Now maybe it's not the board. Maybe the board's good. and the other board root my CPU. Now you could say, oh man, maybe it's your power supply. Maybe your power supply is just turning off. Okay, that's fine, you know. Oh, get this shit out of here. God damn it. He has to unhook all this. I had that prepared. I had that prepared. I can't even read comments because this is going to be posted from the future from now. But I can see someone maybe saying, oh, maybe your power supply is bad. Okay? So here is a gigabyte. Here's the second board. So here, in an older gigabyte, it's a GA-H81M HD2. It has, I think, a i5 4690K, 8 gigs of RAM. Okay, let's hook the keyboard up. So we have everything hooked up the same as it was before. The mouse. DVI cable. That's off. Hooked in. 8-pin. Okay. Power switch. Oh, power supply is bad. Then this shouldn't boot up either. So turn the power supply on. Kick it on. Oh, what? It's turning on? Now watch a board not turn on. That'd be pretty funny. There you go. You see? It's staying on. I wouldn't think the AMD CPU would take more power than this i5, you know, I think it's a 4690K. 4690K. No boot device found. Show what it is. System info. Okay. Doesn't really say anything. Dual BIOS. Pretty nice. You can't overclock it, but I wouldn't do it on this board. So as you see, I'm messing around in the BIOS and it's still running. This is 8 gigs of DDR3. It runs at 3.6 gigahertz. Okay, that just proves my point. At least my motherboard works. The keyboard, the mouse isn't like tweaking the motherboard, or the keyboards are not messing with it. Power supply works. So that eliminates, I know the keyboard and the mouse is not causing the problem. I know the power supply is not causing the problem. I know the monitor, the cable, nothing causing the problem. Only thing I can't eliminate down is either is it the motherboard or the CPU. So my wife is ordering me a different CPU for it. I have her ordering the lowest, the cheapest one. It still has onboard graphics on it. It's like 55 bucks. I'm gonna order that before I actually send the board back. I want to verify it's the board. Obviously, I get the new CPU and it still doesn't boot. I know it's the board, and I could just RMA. Do an RMA on the CPU, because maybe the first board had no problem. Maybe it just happened that the CPU died. Maybe I just had bad luck. Maybe I had really bad luck and the board was bad and the CPU was bad. Both of them at the same exact time. It happens. I've had but maybe the original board wasn't bad and they did an RMA for nothing for the motherboard, and it was a CPU the whole time. But I don't know. It's a long video, so I can prove, you know, it doesn't work.